Please welcome to the stage Vilas Dhar, president of the Patrick J. McGovern Foundation, Beth Simone Noveck, director of GovLab at Northeastern University, and Dalila Wilson-Scott, EVP and Chief Diversity Officer of Comcast Corporation and president of the Comcast NBCUniversal Foundation.
Good afternoon, all. I was joking that my son told me this morning when I walked out that I'm wearing my pajamas to work, but I feel like the forum is my living room, so welcome. Welcome, and special thank you to the Philadelphia Citizen team and Larry and Roxanne for just an incredible agenda, and of course, an excellent room. So we're gonna talk about AI for social impact in particular. I think all of you know our lives are impacted by AI. AI already does some amazing things, whether it's helping us here at Comcast with customer service, predicting wildfire progression, helping with vaccine deployment. We were talking a little bit about that earlier. There's so many benefits to AI. We also know, though, that people think about the risks and sort of all that can come with AI. But we're gonna spend the next few moments talking about the positive aspects and how we should be thinking about using and leveraging AI for the work that we do. I'm joined by two incredible panelists today. I'm going to start with Vilas' first question. So Vilas is the head of the Patrick McGovern Foundation and focuses on promoting something called ethical AI, but also using data science to create social change. So Vilas, define ethical AI for us.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It's really nice to be in Philadelphia, and thank you for the warm welcome here. This is great. I will tell you that sometimes I wake up at 4 a.m. and the only thing I can hear in the back of my head is the letters AI, and it's really getting, I'd rather be like Taylor Swift or something, and it said AI everywhere, right? We all recognize it. My answer to your question is actually, I don't care very much about ethical AI. I don't think it means anything. What does it mean for a technology to be ethical? We don't expect technology to make good decisions about society, about how kind we are to each other, about how generous we are. We should be talking about an ethical society. And then we should be asking the question, how does AI help move us in that direction? This is where we've lost the way a little bit. And I get it on the hype cycle, right? I mean, AI everywhere, all the time, all at once. I'm excited, though, because all of the things you mentioned, the ways that AI can help us build better trust with each other, the ways that it can help us be more creative, the ways that it can help us be more inspired, these are things that create a new opportunity for us to say, how do we want to engage with each other? How do we make sure that the ways that AI could help us do that are what we're investing in? That we're actually spending the intentional time to talk about things like justice and equity and participation. And say, if AI is going to change everything, let's make sure it changes them in ways that promote those values.
Absolutely. My next guest, Beth Simone Noveck, she runs the Byrne Center for Social Change at Northeastern University, as well as GovLab, also focusing on how do we think about technology as it relates to solutions for social issues. Beth, can you talk a little bit about how AI relates to your work and how you think about just AI in society?
Like Vilas.
That's it.
I standing on one foot, like Vilas, it keeps me up a lot at night. But I think first and foremost, because we need to get beyond the hype that you've talked about, especially beyond the doomerism that we hear cultivated so much in everything that we're reading now. And I think, first of all, to demystify what seems like a rather magical set of tools, especially if you've been on ChatGPT and you've ever had it write a poem for you or a bedtime story for your kids, it all seems like some kind of magic going on under the hood. We have to recognize, first and foremost, these are a set of data processing tools. That is, I think, what they are and need to be treated as such and are really, really powerful for that reason. So what's really great about them is not just that I can talk more using technology, but I can actually listen more. So if you think about the AI that's on your phone, you know how your phone says to you, hey, would you like an album of your vacation pictures or the dinners you've had over the years? AI is really good at categorizing and organizing information. So what that means is Instead of just having people talking, what we can actually do now is do a much better job at listening to what people are telling us. And let me give you just one quick example. We're involved in a project, you asked about our work, with a partner called Innovate Public Schools that organizes parents all over the country to advocate for their kids' education. So one of the things we're doing is using AI to help summarize and translate the IEP, the Individualized Education Plan. 20% of kids in public school who have a learning disability get an IEP. That's a 100-page PDF, unintelligible to the regular person, let alone to somebody who is low literacy or non-English speaking. So with AI, what we can do is summarize that, we can translate that, we can extract what's in there to enable parents to advocate for their kids and demand the rights that are theirs. So that's the kind of powerful thing we need to do more of with AI.
And I love the framing that both of you have laid out, and hope it's a point of inspiration and guidance to those of us in the room. We shouldn't be giving away our power when it comes to new technologies and sort of inciting more fear. We should be thinking about how do we step into that opportunity. Vilas, you talk about democracy and equity. What does that look like as it relates to AI? And how do we create a human-centered AI future?
Yeah. You know, Dalila, I'm very much an optimist, right? And I believe very much in positive futures, but I will tell you, I do think we have given up our power already. Over the last 20 years, we have become okay with the idea that a very small set of companies who are making technical decisions should be the ones who make decisions about how we live our lives, about how parents and children learn about the world, about how we build political structures. And so to me, this isn't a moment of kind of rosy-eyed, oh, AI will fix everything. The exact opposite of the kind of doomerism, Beth, that you spoke to. The opposite of doomerism is solutionism, right. This idea that technology will fix everything for us. I just don't believe it. But I think we do have an opportunity. I think we have an opportunity to step into the space, into the public arena, and say, you know what, it's okay. For a little while, we said it was okay that the tech companies could tell us how the social media should work. But we're not gonna let that continue, because we've seen what happens when you do that. We've seen that people who have always been vulnerable become more vulnerable in that context, that we have no way to regulate and police those actions, that we have no way to actually figure out, how is this good for me as a person, a family, a community? With AI, we have that chance again. And the question for me is, are we actually gonna go back into it and do the same thing we did before? Or are we gonna rely on our real liberal democratic values and say, you know what, this isn't a conversation for tech companies and regulators to have on Capitol Hill. I have a point of view, I have an opinion. I've engaged enough to learn about what's happening, but much more importantly, I brought my lived experience. We see this happening all over the place. We see it happening with young people. I was speaking with an amazing young woman outside, and I can't quite see you here in the audience, but she shared with me about exactly how much both frustration, but also excitement young people have to step into one of the most fast-moving pieces of technology. We see it with indigenous communities, where we get to work out with young Lakota youth who over 3 weeks build an app, starting from scratch, that does the following. I'll be very brief. It lets them take a picture of a plant in their native lands. It tells them what that plant is. They built the AI that does this. I mean, it's an amazing feat. But maybe more importantly, tells them what the name of that plant is in Lakota languages. Connects to a database of cultural wisdom and tells mythologies and stories. This is stuff that kids who are 14 to 16 are doing just because they're interested in connecting back to their roots. This is the kind of participation we want to see around AI.
And it's also sort of representative of what will happen if we don't get it right? How are we being inclusive with it? One of the things you advocate for is more public investment, more pro-social investment as it comes to AI, so people aren't dictating our future, that we're creating it. Beth, something you want to add on this topic of democracy and equity as it relates to AI?
Oh, absolutely, and I want to connect it back to what Vilas said about the importance of taking control over the technologies that we use every day rather than letting them control us, or becoming what Thoreau called becoming the tools of our tools. So to really take that action, we have to get beyond those kinds of closed-door meetings that are happening in Washington where only a few CEOs are invited to really determine that future. And I think maybe ironically, or perhaps hopefully, and I'm also a tremendous optimist, AI can help us to do that, and that's what's so exciting. So the point I was making before about how it can help us to listen better by summarizing or organizing information means that now we're going out and able to have conversations with large numbers of people, with communities of people. The Collective Intelligence Project, for example, has gone out and asked the American public about their views on AI, again, using AI to make it fast and easy to do that. We're working on a project driven all by students, I have to say. Everybody in the project is under the age of 21, called Unlocking Literacy, where what we're doing is using AI to organize a set of national conversations with parents and caregivers, with educators, with kids themselves about how to address the challenge of literacy, for example, in this country. So a major problem. You might have seen the survey data that came out from the McGovern Foundation just 2 days ago, really emphasizing and drilling down on the fact that only 32% of kids in this country, 32%, have basic reading proficiency. I mean, it is a crisis issue. And to address that, we need the communities that are most affected involved in developing those solutions. And that's where AI comes in. Not just as a set of tools like Duolingo and Khan Academy and others who are doing wonderful things using AI to teach literacy, but also to use AI to actually have conversations with people, both about the problems and why they're occurring, but I think above all, how we can fix those problems and how we can drive through the meaningful change that we're entitled to.
And consistent with what we're seeing more of in philanthropy today, which is, are we actually including the voice of the people we're trying to impact? Vilas, you've mentioned a couple of examples already, but what are some other examples that you're excited about in how AI is improving people's lives?
Oh, absolutely. So many things across the board, from helping subsistence farmers know when to plant and harvest their crops. It sounds like such a faraway problem, and yet it changes by 30 or 40% the amount of economic return they can get from a crop. But at the same time, it also has effects on climate change in pretty nuanced and sort of sophisticated ways, like it changes carbon emissions for rice farming. Now, these are not the things that you're hearing, the heads of the big tech companies talk about. And can I just say, Dalila, I'm put on a lot of stages with excuse the language, but tech bros, where I have to represent civil society voices. I am so thrilled to be here with Beth and with you and feel like we've got a friendly vibe in the room because we all care about the right things. Thank you very much for that. Look, there's all kinds of things that are happening out there, and I want to even just bring it back to a personal and individual moment, right? I have, in my entire life, always wanted to be able to draw really well. And I've spent so many hours trying to do it. I've just not been very good at it. I have all these ideas, but it's just not a skill set that I've developed yet. I spent hours when the first generation of these kind of AI tools came out, where I could say, hey, this is what I'm envisioning in my mind, and this is what I want to see on the screen. And without the technical skills to be able to make it happen, I could use my imagination to reflect my art, and it's been a joy. These are very personal moments, and if you haven't done this, and if you ever want to, you should go and try one of these tools. You can envision things in your mind and make them come into reality in a way that inspires creativity and just engagement. I do it with my nieces and nephews, and it's so much fun. This is the stuff that we should be talking about.
Our conversation today is touching on the work that you both do, right? We've talked a lot about the shared values, how you think about it from a justice, equity perspective. But for those of us in the room, some technologists, some not, what should we keep in mind to ensure that AI, and any new technology for that matter, is really creating and fostering the change that we all want to see?
Yeah, would you like to?
So picking up, obviously there's the point that Vilas made earlier about the control of these technologies, the transparency around these technologies, the security, the questions that we all need, the hard questions we need to ask about how is our data getting used, what is our privacy, and to demand that these are ethical and responsible. I know the tech itself is not, it's how people use it, but we want to ensure that the policies behind these technologies and the architectures behind them are public, are transparent, are controlled by us. But again, I want to pick up on what Vilas is talking about, which is more conversation, more focus on these questions of the things that each of us can do with these tools to advance social change in our own communities. So the fact that I can now go on, forget me, my 9th grader, went home the other day and built himself a physics tutor to help himself, deal with the subject I can't possibly teach him about physics because I don't remember anything. So he went on and built his own physics tutor to help him study for his physics test. I love the fact that, and by the way, he doesn't code at all. That's the thing, these are all English language driven, or to your point, Lakota or Icelandic or other, these tools are being used now to help rescue dying indigenous languages that have become endangered through systematic discrimination and oppression over years and years and years, where we have sought to wipe out many of these indigenous languages. AI is helping us to rescue them and creating chatbots where you can talk in these in the native language and rescue your own tradition. That IEP tool I told you about is not just being built by students, it's also being built by parents and kids who have IEPs are developing that tool together, driven by their understanding of what they need to advocate for themselves. So this kind of community-driven, bottom-up use of technology, yes, we read a lot about the tech bro investment culture and these big deals and CEOs, but what's really exciting are these individual uses in communities of people grabbing hold of these tools to make change happen for themselves.
Another question for both of you, but I am going to open it up to the room, so we'll have some time to take one or two. But start with you, Vilas. You're in a room, you're at a cocktail party with one of these doomerism champions, talking about all the ways AI is going to end civilization as we know it. What advice do you give that person about how to have hope and optimism?
Oh, that's such a good question. I mean, look, at the end of the day, how do you inspire somebody to have hope? It has nothing to do with AI or doomerism or anything else, right? To me, I start with my communities. I start with the people I see. I start with young people who are figuring out how to use these tools to create more agency and voice. I look at how institutions are being transformed. I'll give you a very quick example, and it's a little bit of a cliche because you've all heard about how AI is being used in hiring. There's two stories to that. There's the one that everybody has heard, which is people are deploying these algorithms, and the algorithms are biased, and they're discriminating against women in jobs, and they're being trained on this data set, and it's leading to really bad outcomes. I think it's a very fair story. But there's a second part of that story that isn't said so often. Why are these algorithms biased and discriminating in this way? Because they've been trained on 20 years of human data where human recruiters have been biased and discriminated. That's not the inspiring part. The inspiring part, though, is when a tool shows you that in such stark relief, we have an opportunity to ask a fundamental question. Not, why are we okay with the tool doing this? Why have we been so quietly okay with the fact that this is the 20-year existence that's lived around us? And how do we change it? That's where I find hope, right? It's not in identifying the problem, it's in recognizing that we have agency, and now we have tools that uncover this bias in a way that's so stark that it should hit every single one of us in our heart and say, what are we gonna do to change it? And you know what? I see people stepping up to change it. I see it across hiring. I see it across the bias in ways. Federal eviction law has been used in racially disparate ways. Work that won a Pulitzer Prize from one of our partners at the Invisible Institute. I have 100 stories like this. Hope comes from the understanding that we have agency to make the world better. And if these tools help us find that agency, that's what we should care about.
I love that. It's a choice, right?
It's a choice.
Hope is a choice. Beth, what advice or optimism could you bring to a conversation like that?
I'm going to just piggyback on this conversation to say that trying these tools for yourself, trying these tools to understand how you can use them, how your kids can use them, how your communities can use them for this kind of empowerment. I mean, it is a hopeful story because, yes, we can now visualize these patterns of discrimination, and when we can visualize them, when we can see them, we can actually do something about them. And so now these tools are ever more powerful. So I can take a whole spreadsheet's worth of data, I mean, thousands of pages of spreadsheets, and feed it into some of these tools, and they will spit out the graph that I need to make this data intelligible to me, to my activist community, to the people that I care about, so that we can then take action. It's that ability now to think about how do we build on these tools which are driven, again, not by code, you don't need a degree in programming anymore, but by anybody, as long as you can speak, and they're so-called multimodal, that is you can talk to them, not just type anymore, that means that you can go out and build the future that you want to create. So the opportunity, whether you care about literacy, or you care about climate, or you care about other issues, whatever it is, the ability to use these tools now, above all, first and foremost, to have conversations with other people and to join together, it now just gets so much faster and easier to do that. And let me give you just one quick example. So before, we've had a lot of tools for citizen engagement and activism for years. I've been involved in building many of these tools. The web has been really good at allowing everybody to talk. But again, then it's really, really hard to take action and to listen. So Citizens Foundation, open source technology, everything free and open, based in the US and in Iceland, is building tools so that when a community has a conversation and suggests ideas, the AI helps to then really quickly extract what is it that we're hearing, what is it that people are saying, how do we take action on that. Deb Roy at MIT building fantastic tools so that citizens can sit together in person, records the conversation, and then quickly visualizes back to everybody, this is what we care about, this is what we're saying. So again, to put tools in people's hands so that we can all be more powerful actors in our own communities around the issues that we care about. That's what I'm so excited about and that we need to shine more of a light on.
And it's great advice. It's easy to hate something or fear something that you're not in, that you're not coming close to. All right, I'm going to look for some questions. I see a hand right here, blue shirt, black vest. Their mic's coming. Oh,
There
sorry.
we go. We can see now.
I told Roxanne I would give her notice, but I did not, clearly. I'm sorry. Right here. Thank you.
Thank you. I wonder if I could get your thoughts on how AI might be used to develop a common app for provision of social services.
Want to go first?
No, please.
So I do a lot of work. I'm in government. I've been in government and do a lot of work in and around government. So one of the most exciting things that we see developing is, of course, now the ability to use these so-called chatbots or conversational agents. In other words, it's very good at talking. So what that means is we can provide, instead of requiring you to go to a government office 9 to 5, very difficult for working people, people with kids to care for, elderly parents, or who don't drive and frankly shouldn't be driving because of the impact on the climate. Now I can get answers to my questions 24/7 about my government benefits and my government services to which I'm entitled. To me, the adoption, accelerating the adoption of that technology is hugely important, which is why I'm excited about jurisdictions like Boston and Seattle that have gone out and said, we want to encourage government workers to responsibly use this technology to better serve residents, and we want people to try this technology. That's why I spend a lot of my time in a project called Innovate US, where we provide free training to government workers, government professionals, in how do I use this tech to better serve citizens and do exactly what you're talking about. We can not just provide 24/7 service, but we can simplify legalese and those long PDFs into things that people can understand, not just in English, but in multiple languages. I think we're just at the beginning of a revolution, I hope, in better government service and making government more responsive and effective for citizens.
Another question.
As someone who works running a center for inclusive innovation in tech, whose colleague works at the intersection of gun violence, grief, trauma, and ethical AI, when I hear this conversation, I'm wondering, you two are up here, and that's amazing. What other, from a resource perspective, how are we thinking about the landscape, and what kind of has enabled the bravery through your organizations to go forth and show that another way of thinking about investment in care is possible?
Yeah, you just named a set of things there that should be at the center of every conversation we have. And if we could go and swap out every kind of AI headline for something to talk about mental health, to talk about gun violence, think about how much progress we could make if we could bring that same hype cycle to those topics in constructive dialogue. But I'll tell you something, one of the things that we deeply struggle with is when there's such a public interest in a topic like AI, how do we make sure that we're bending it to be able to talk about these topics in ways that give us advances? And you mentioned bravery. It's not our bravery by any means. It's the bravery of the partners that we get to support around the world that are doing this. The fact that conversations about AI are entirely in the global north, and yet we've been able to engage 50 countries in the global majority to say, what does it mean when a tech company in Silicon Valley tries to bring something into our country that changes the way our workers are exploited in fisheries or in mining, right? There's a global perspective that's necessary. And when we bring that back to the US, I think the one thing that I will say, and I want to follow on Beth's answer earlier, is this can't be a conversation where we say somebody else is going to figure it out. Whether it's around government services, where that recent EO that came from the White House under the Biden-Harris administration was exceptional in pushing things forward, I'm not going to say that we can sit back and let government figure out how to deliver services or fix the kinds of problems you've talked about. My question is, how do we use AI and technologies to empower community organizations, service organizations, like the people who understand the front lines of vulnerability, to use these tools to actually change it, and then go back to government and say, we've figured out a way to solve this in our in our small community. You need to figure out a way to make sure this gets to every community in the country.
Thank you. You know, I hope our speakers has left you all with a little bit more hope and inspiration around AI. But of course, it's all about how we turn that into execution and impact at the end of the day. So make sure you are learning the technology, using the technology, and also thinking about what's possible. Thank you.
Thank you all.